off, I wanted to draw out the size principle. And so see, this is Henneman size principle. So we'll start off by drawing some amazing looking fiber types. And we're going to classify the bigger ones as what?
Type 2.
All these 2. We really want to get fancy, we'll call them X. And they have a nice little continuum on page 95. So humans roughly have about 7 different fiber types, which we'll just classify simply as 1 and 2. But it's kind of like this. If you were to look at this bookmark, I think we all could agree that it's red. So there's your type 2 muscle fiber. But then when you put it next to another color, you're like, oh, well, shit, they're both red, but maybe this one's a little darker. It has a little different characteristics. And so they start subdividing. And so we have like an X, which is, more explosive, where you have a 2A and a 2AC, and they kind of mimic some of the 1 characteristics. We can't necessarily take a 2 and convert it into a 1. That would be a cross. I like to think of it as like a line where you can't convert the 2s into 1s, but they are doing a lot of cool literature, not literature, but studies looking at twins. Scientists love twins because they have the same genes. And they will do biopsies looking at, a quad of a strength athlete. And then there was one study that looked at an endurance athlete. So they were twins and they just went different routes. And their fiber types were completely different. And so it's pretty fascinating on training and the effect it does have on the myofilaments. Now, we haven't exactly, I'm excited to, talk to Dr. Schoenfeld next week. You guys will be invited to that because I'm going to ask him some of the stuff. And basically the whole reason I'm having that talk is just to make fun of NASM in a polite way. But he's one of the leading researchers in the world, and they're still not applying his principles. And so hypertrophy is the growing of, so here's a fiber, here would be a bigger fiber. So it's the increase in size. Now, what is hyperplasia?
Increase in the number of cells.
Yeah, so that would be going from 1 fiber to 2 fibers. And that can happen in like cats and rats and animals that can, you see those little fuckers, they'll jump like 30 feet in the air. You're like, how the hell do they do that? Because they're able to increase the fiber types. They have 5. Well, as they walk around and train, they can then have 15, 20, where humans will just have 1, but that 1 will get bigger. And what's it called when you go from 1 to a bigger size, but then it goes back to the smaller size? What's that process called? Well, I just kind of explained it kind of funky. So think of like you go in a cast and your arm gets smaller. What's that called?
Is that atrophy?
Yeah, atrophy. And so then we have some phenomena that can take place, such as, let's go through and label these axes. And so what is on the y-axis on the left here? You guys know?
Is it time?
Threshold.
Oh, threshold.
And then the bottom we have force. I like to think of it like volume and base. They're different, but they work together. And so as the force goes up, the threshold is going to go up. And we will recruit larger muscle fibers as the force and the threshold goes up. So if I'm lifting a weight 20 times, I'll probably be like right about here in muscle recruitment. And so I like to draw these lines to break it up, just to kind of help simplify it. So like say this is 12 plus reps. So this would be more going here would be 15, 20 or so. This would be like our 6 to 12 rep range, where this would be 6, this would be 12. And then up here would be your 1 to 5 rep range. So 1 would be the big boy, and then this would be like your 5. And that's where our percentages come through. So this would be 85%, this line right here, where this would be like 75%, and where this X is at 65, that would, or 15%, sorry, 15 reps would be like 65%. And so as we do certain exercises, there's 3 ways that we can recruit this big, powerful sucker. And what are the 3 ways that we recruit him?
Lifting really heavy.
Yep.
volitional fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the third.
And that selective recruitment is something that's going to happen as you do something very explosive, and you can engage the type 2X like a jump. And that's one of the things I get pissed off about with like those little Tinkerbell jumps is the purpose is to optimize type 2 recruitment, but yet we're doing something in a slow aerobic way. So that's kind of going against Henneman's size principle. And so when we just look at this, we have a motor unit. And what's the definition of a motor unit? A good term to flashcard. It's a neuron and all the associated muscle fibers it innervates. And so think of, we have Joe, we have Jimmy, we have Ryan. So think of, just simply put, Ryan's going to be our 1, Jimmy, you're going to be our 2A, Joe's going to be our 2X. And so I have 3 arms coming out of me. One arm's going to Ryan, one arm's going to Jimmy, one's going to Joe. So when I lift this weight 15 times, I'm just telling Ryan to do the work. So he's the only one who is getting engaged. So when Jimmy comes in, that would be like maybe right about here. That would be, let's say, 10 reps. So Ryan and Jimmy both would be working. But Joe could be right next to both of you, the muscle fiber, but she's not getting engaged. Whereas when we go to a 1 rep max, all of you guys are working together, and that's synchronization. And that's where we can work on that by going heavier more regularly, and that motor unit recruitment / synchronization is going to sync up. So you see that a lot with people, like the first time they do a 1 rep max, it's like it's all over the place and they have a hard time holding that weight. It's because I haven't told all 3 of you to work in unison before. And so the synchronization is a little off. And that's why it's advantageous to do some super overload, maybe 110, 125%. So then you can teach the nervous system to handle those loads. So like on page 90, you'll see table 5.2. You're going to have the differences in the fibers. Some things they may ask you, like we should know the difference between a ligament and a tendon. That's pretty simple stuff. How do you guys feel about the difference between those two?
Ligament is bone to bone, right? Tendon is bone to muscle.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some cards that we suggest for you to flashcard, like tendon stiffness. They like to throw in a question on there. You'll see here in a second. So that's on page 101. You're not going to get a ton of questions from 4 and 5. That's why we're going to do them together. I'll say overall, 5 and 6. That's why you'll probably maybe total 3 to 4 total questions. So when we look at the, where are we? Let's go here. So we'll start off with review question. So we have a 21-year-old male who is a cross-country runner. He has the following info: a VO2 max of 55 milliliters per kilogram per minute. He's running a 12.5 mile and a half time, 13.8 body fat percentage. Which of the following should be his main focus during the off season? And we will put these at the beginning of every chapter because chapter 13 and 14, 12 and 13 will have a good amount of questions like this.
Okay. I'm going to go with A.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. So how's our VO2 max?
Decent.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You can get up to even like 60s, and that's pretty normal. You'll see once you start getting below 50s for males, then you start getting to like that good range. For females, like 40 would be considered like okay. 12:30 and a mile and a half. Obviously, guys do better with guys, girls will do better with girls. But how's that for a mile and a half, Jimmy?
I feel like it could be a lot better for a cross country runner. Mm-hmm. You're looking to be probably like at least 8-minute miles.
Yeah.
So like under 10 would be a good shot or a good target.
I mean, if you're 21 and we're assuming like he's running for a team, it wouldn't be. You could be getting under 9 minutes. That would be like still like that's under a 6-minute mile. I mean, some of those dudes will be running like eight sub eights. Yeah, even less than that. And then for a 21-year-old, 13.8% body fat. How's that?
I say that's fine. That's pretty good.
You'd actually probably see him with a lower body fat percentage, but just for these variables, it would be we want to work on his mile time. So if his mile time, so 13.8, you're probably, as Ryan will attest to, and Jimmy with the athletes you work with, you're definitely going to be in the single digits for a lot of the males. So number 2, tendon stiffness has been shown to increase by as much as 18% with loads of blank of your 1RM, 20, 65, or 80.
Stiffness.
This is a term that I think would be good. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say C, because stiffness is kind of linked to more explosiveness, right?
Yep. So that's actually going to be the correct answer. 101 tendon stiffness. I'll flashcard that one, and you will see some percentages like that. In 80%, as it says on 101, is what the intensities, heavy loads have helped with. So think of stiffness not as a bad thing. They looked at some of the top Cuban high jumpers. Do you guys know what the world record is for the high jump?
7.4.
I jumped with a guy named Teak Wilburn in high school. I was a senior. He was a sophomore. He ended up going to Cal, full ride scholarship. He broke the world record for under 18, and he jumped 7.5.
Jeez.
Boy, could just fuck. I would look at Teak. That's bullshit. He's that guy who come to practice with a squirt gun, flirting with all the girls, and I'm out there busting my ass. I'm like, motherfucker. The guy could jump, but he ended up getting an ankle injury. But the world record is a Cuban dude, and he jumped 8 feet and a quarter of an inch. And so when they looked at the thickness of their Achilles tendon, it was significantly thicker than other individuals. Like you're going to see, I didn't actually watch the All-Star, but who won? Did they have a dunk contest?
It did.
Who won it?
Oh gosh, Anthony Simmons.
So, but like I guarantee, if you're to look at the thickness of these guys that are having 44+ inch verts, the Achilles is just thicker. So think of it as like a spring, and so it's just allowing for that spring. And so going heavy can help increase your tendon stiffness. 3, peak power for squat and ballistic bench press have been found to be blank percent of 1RM. Peak power. This can be seen on, what do we think? A, B, or C?
I'm gonna go with B.
I feel like B as well.
Yep. Good job. Peak power is a term that we suggest for you guys to take away from this chapter. That's going to be in the 106 chart that they have there. For 4, which of the following allows for supercompensation to occur? When we talk about supercompensation, we've got to look at Dr. Seeley's general adaptation syndrome. And so what's that first little dip part of general adaptation syndrome?
Is it alarm?
Good. And then we have the development of
Isn't it like overreaching and then overtraining?
So you're getting there. So you have so that's like more over here. So we have the alarm, and then we build up the what?
Is it response?
Close. Resistance.
Resistance. Okay.
Resistance.
And then you're going to have potentially overtraining, which would be the exhaustion part. So there is this supercompensation that can occur. And so this is where it gets into functional overreaching, functional overtraining, or non-functional overtraining.
So I was going to go with overreaching, because isn't that precursor before overtraining?
Yeah, so if you look in the text, this will be on page 107 and 108. Table 5.3, they like to ask about that. You'll see at least one question about this. And the correct answer to this one would be functional overreaching. So that's actually not a bad thing. It can be advantageous to the nervous system. Overtraining would be something that we wouldn't want to see there for B. And there's no such thing as non-functional overtraining. That's just a random word.
So sorry, you said functional over training?
Reaching. No, the answer would be A.
Okay.
Yep. So functional overreaching will be stages of training, table 5.3. And you can see the chart that they have for overtraining. And overtraining that's like a badge of honor. That's really tough to get. It can happen, but it usually is going to kick in months of being in that exhaustive state.
Okay.
And which kind of leads us into the next one. So which of the following is not a form of overtraining? So non-functional overreaching, functional overreaching, or delayed onset muscle soreness. I would bet you guys will see at least 1 to 2 questions on that part on 108.
I'm torn because you just said one of these is not a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's the way of saying it's not a form, or the other one I'm thinking.
Which one are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking DOMS, because I feel like that happens to everyone if you're training at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And so overtraining is going to be something where you're going to have flu-like symptoms. You're going to have people that are like just sleeping 12, 14 hours a day, and they're still waking up tired. Their hormones are all fucked up. Cortisol is pretty much dust in the morning where it should be elevated, and everything's just all jacked up. It can sometimes take like 6 months working with a doc to fix a lot of these profiles. And so late onset muscle soreness is just as we've all experienced before, it's just a normal thing that happens, micro trauma to the fibers, and you're going to repair, you're going to sleep it off, and you'll be fine. So C, delayed onset muscle soreness would be the correct answer.
Okay.
So is overreaching kind of like not necessarily the goal, but as far as like the hardest part of training, to kind of flirt underneath overtraining and hit overreaching?
Yeah, and then what will happen is it's kind of, think of it like PAP training, the potentiation of the nervous system, like you're exciting it. And so by overreaching, you're going to have this delayed effect of a benefit. And some people will disagree with it and they don't like to implement it, but overreaching can be seen as a benefit. 6, last one, which I kind of already answered, but which of the following performance or physiological characteristics is not usually observed in a state of non-functional overreaching, NFOR, within the athlete populations?
Not usually observed. God. I'm going to say B.
Jimmy?
Yeah, I guess I'll go B as well.
Yeah, so as I said, when you are in a state of overtraining, your hormones are all jacked up. Your cortisol is really, really, really low. And again, cortisol is an awesome hormone. It's a marker that we use for inflammatory, but also for like immunity. If you have too much of it, it can jack up your immunity. If you don't have enough of it, it can be negative. And so if our cortisol is really low, our energy levels are really, really low throughout the day. And so sleep disturbances, you're sleeping like 14, 16 hours a day sometimes. It's almost like you have mono. So it's definitely one of the things that you would experience with that. So it would be 6.